For as long as I could remember, uh, okay, what am I looking at? What? No, seriously, what am I looking at? I mean, I've enjoyed some surrealist horror in my day, but this game legit feels like an assault on my senses. In a good way? Do I like this? Wait, I think I like this. Wait a sec, I think I like this a lot! Eclipsium is a game by Housefire Games, as I think their first title, which, wow, this is a bit of a gamble for your first game, you know, high concept, surrealist, horror, puzzle, walking simulator, which I hate that term, but whatever, and produced by Critical Reflex, which, if you don't know who those are by name, they produce Mouthwashing, No, I'm Not Human, and also Best Boy Game Ever Made, Lunacid. It is one of those games that caught my eye as I have beaten my Steam recommendeds into such a shape that I keep getting a bunch of random horror gems recommended to me on my front page out of nowhere. And you know what? I kind of adore it for that. So it popped up one day, and I can't help but be excited when I see extreme texture dithering over live action FMV graphics. It just, I don't know, it feels like someone's massaging my brain, which is kind of the gimmick of this game, massaging people's brains, but also the first-person FMV thing. Okay, it's sort of a walking simulator. Again, I hate using that term, but the fact that the majority of this game can be described as you press W and then don't stop until you get to where you need to go, it's whatever. But it's also got some puzzles that aren't hard, but they're also really entertaining and really fun to do. There's a few bugs, I will admit as well. I had 2 bugs, and we'll point them out as we go through the game. One of them was actually game-breaking, and the other one was, yeah, okay, we'll get there. But basically, Eclipsium is one of those games that is a sensory experience where you have to actually play it to get the full experience. And honestly, I genuinely cannot do it justice. This game is weird, but we will cover how weird it is as we go through it to the best of my abilities. So please grab Arthur's paw as I drag you through a game that literally caused me to feel sick, pain, and also kind of chill vibes. I'll also do my best to explain what I think happens in the story. Well, I say story with air quotes because this game is a Lynchian nightmare dreamscape K-hole that I think could be interpreted in many ways, so yeah, let's get to it and find out what Eclipsium is all about. Immediately, you'll notice the visuals are fucking striking. As much as it is a low-fidelity game, and I think it's kind of a hallmark, they don't keep it so low fidelity that the imagery can't paint a volatile picture, sometimes transitioning between multiple different forms of artistic medium in order to convey some kind of surrealist message. That was a lot of words to basically say, wow, that's pretty, yay! As you clap your hands like a goddamn seal begging for fish, like you are. But there is a lot of images of men marching in shadows, in all-consuming eye, and hospitals. So we eventually wake up as a person who's likely in the hospital bed for a lot of these cutscenes, and this is our protagonist, who I will refer to as Mr. Guy, because he doesn't get a name, and there's only 2 characters in the game, unless you count a giant snake later, but yeah, he wakes up in a hospital, and holy moly, off to a great start. The door is blocked off, and you can interact with anything that glows and pull it. It's kind of physics-y, and I kind of like the weird physics-ass manipulation stuff that this game has going on, so I'll gladly fuck around. Rather quickly, you'd find some medical scissors, and here is where I have to address an elephant in the room. This game is literally a sickness. It made me feel incredibly nauseous. Like, legit, the next scene that I'm about to show you actually did make me feel sick. I should note, I did have my headphones cranked, and the sound design in this game is fantastic, but yeah, it impacted me a lot. But the visuals on a larger screen as well, with the dithering, the pixelation, and just the perspective of it, gave me a headache after like long periods of play, which is why a lot of my footage had to be cut off after like an hour, because it just, I don't know, it started to scratch my brain in a way that I didn't like, but I genuinely kept wanting to come back because of how visually beautiful this game is. We'll cover this a lot more, but yeah, what was so gross that it made me feel physically ill? Easy. When you get to the door that's blocked off, you go to the scales and automatically you take out the medical scissors and pull your tongue out, and then just gingerly slice it off and put it on the scale, and the sounds that come from that genuinely made me feel so ill that for the next like 5-10 minutes I felt like a pit in my stomach was kind of rotting. Okay, listen, I'm not a pussy. Far from it, I'm actually quite a dick. And when it comes to graphic depictions of bodily mutilation, I'm usually not that affected by them. It's kind of something I enjoy a lot, you know. I enjoy body horror from time to time. It's one of my favorite and most effective forms of horror, and I find them relatively enjoyable, so my tolerance is actually pretty high. I don't know what it is. It was probably the visual mixed with the rather gross sound effects used that made me feel genuinely nauseous for a while after this, but I suppose that's neither here nor there at this point. So after the harrowing experience that I just went through, we go to a waiting room, and me being me immediately, I had to play with the block ball loopy thing. I don't know what these are called, but you know what they are. You've seen them before. I don't know if there's something wrong with me. I just really enjoy messing with these kinds of things, and because I got all of them to the end of their little loop, I got an achievement for it. I felt pretty satisfied because of that. Regardless, the waiting room is something you will see a bit here and there, as it's kind of the game over loading screen, and it's used for some transitions between levels too, which is cool. We walk through the doors of the waiting room to the outside world, and now we have entered Eclipsium, but also a heavily wooded area. It must have been some pretty prime real estate if they could get a hospital in a forest like this. I joke, but trust me, this is probably the most normal level transition there is in the game. We haven't even gotten to the paintings segment yet. The forest is beautiful and shows off the style of the game, though it only goes up from here. This is basically a pseudo tutorial. Walk around, jump around, and when you find something to interact with, you do. It also gives you your central objective. That thing in the distance, the giant circle loop with a heart in the center of it. Yeah, the whole premise of the game is to get there, I think. You don't really fully get that until later, so let's continue forward into this fucking horrendously rickety-ass bridge walkway. I don't know, I got my first death here because I'm dumb, but this is where you find out that this game has platforming. It's pretty cool. But when you die, you go back to the waiting room, as I said before, and come out to where you were a bit more prepared. The platforming and logic puzzles of this game are a little easy, but they are incredibly satisfying. Side note, I know I am breezing past the fact that this is a confusing non-Euclidean hellscape of weird-ass geometry, but if I had to say, isn't this weird every time anything of note happened, then by God, this video would be at least another half hour longer. So yeah, after navigating through the weird dropping down wooden bridge scaffolding puzzles, we are greeted with an odd sight. It is a massive tree that is covered in a bunch of log cutting axes embedded into it. Upon touching it, you get story, I guess? It's from the perspective of a lady sitting at a table, drinking tea, hesitantly fiddling with a letter that she is going to attempt to open. But before she can, her nervous hands drop the letter due to there being, war. War is outside. War is happening. Congrats, guys. It's wartime. She quickly runs to grab a knife to protect herself from the war, and we cut back to Mr. Guy, who recently platinumed a prototype for the Xbox 360, and as his reward, he can now do hand knife. Cool. This is the main mechanic of the game. Your hand transforming into various different objects as a means to solve different puzzles, not hand knife, though hand knife is one of the things. But yeah, you gain access to a bunch of them, each of them giving you new ways to interact with the world. I genuinely think it is kind of interesting, but each of these has a weird metaphor to them that, I don't know, I don't think I could really place what it means, or maybe I can, and I'm just lying to you guys because I want to save what I think for a cheeky wrap-up at the end. Who knows, but considering this is a horror video game essay, I'll give you a hint. Yes. With the new knife hand, you have a new means of puzzle solving in the game. Cutting shit from logs to chains to... Okay, that's about it. I mean, there is like maybe 2 sections of the game where you smash glass panels, but it's mostly logs and chains from here on out. And now you have the ability to just progress further into the mines, which is the next major area of the game. Things have to get a bit weirder from here before they get more understandable, and even then, they don't really get that much more understandable. So, yeah, with our newly minted hand knife, we are able to enact violence upon wood and thus gain access to progress. The mines themselves are an odd setting in this game, as they are filled with what can best be described as well, meaning? But it's not very clear what that meaning is. Like, from a reductionist standpoint, I could talk about how you, on this adventure, begin plumbing deeper into the earth, seeing the rotten scaffolding coming undone, but using light to burn away the corruption that has seeped its way here. But what is the corruption? What is it? Well, we'll get into that. The mines themselves are, as I said, rotted. The walkways are falling apart, and I feel like if I was more informed, I could make a non-OSHA compliant joke here, but like, I'm not, so just think I was smart and made a joke here. God, I'm such a pseudo-intellectual sometimes. The only funny thing I just said there was the fact that I said sometimes. But I digress. The mines are a stable pathway of rock and a tunnel where you see that there is still lanterns burning to show the way. As you navigate deeper and deeper down, you begin to see these fleshy growths blocking your path. Now, I did kind of fib a little bit earlier when I said that you use the knife to cut away wood and shit, but you actually use it a lot in this section and a little bit later to cut away these tendrils of meat that are blocking your way, cutting away the sickness, as it were, in order to go deeper. Plank by plank, step by step, you realize that the game is going to have you hold the W key quite a lot, as you are constantly just walking forward. Not much blocks your forward momentum, and when it does, it's actually pretty satisfying to deal with whatever puzzle they throw at you. Speaking of, I was at this point kind of worrying that this was going to be basically just a walking simulator type ordeal with very minimal mechanics, but then we got to a pretty cute puzzle where you have to shine floodlights into specific areas. Why? Because to quote a scholar from years gone by, meat's back on the menu, boys. Yeah, the weird meaty corruption that has filled this mine's crevices has grown a bit out of control, and the only way to scare these massive squibbly bits away is with bright lights. I understand. I too am a meat sack that is terrified of light. Har har har. I have a vitamin D deficiency. The puzzle feels simple at first. Before, without any instructions, you see this light ball thing. Yeah, this light ball thing lights up when you shine one of the floodlights on it, making a small dome that illuminates an area while it's lit. Without telling you what to do, you can kind of piece together that more light shining on this light ball allows it to shine brighter and thus giving you more of a safe space. I really like this kind of intuitive puzzle design that, although a bit obtuse, is pretty easy to understand on your own. Case in point, I have the IQ of a syphilitic hamster and I caught on quickly enough. So with as many lights as possible on the bulb, it reveals one more floodlight that allows you to progress through a narrow passageway completely filled with the meat things. If I may get a little bit morbid here, this does kind of symbolically remind me a bit of an obscure surgery I know about. Yeah, that's one of the things on the list of things that I know about. It's called ablation therapy. I only know about it because family members do have a history of cancer, and one of the cancer treatments that they went through is called ablation therapy, and it involves using extreme heat or extreme cold to destroy diseased or cancer-ridden tissues in order to extract them or make them inert or go into remission. I'm not a scientist or a doctor, I just know about this surgery because of history, but the idea of using a bright light to burn a path through what feels like a cancerous overgrowth is kind of what this reminds me of a lot in concept. I know it may not fully make sense in regards to the rest of the game, but we'll get to what I mean once we actually wrap this game up. In general, this is just some very striking imagery that I really like, and it deserves to be pointed out. I know we are past this point, but fellas, I'm gonna be real with you. This nightmare's dreamscape occupied by literally only two people, a giant fish, a snake, and a few meat tendrils, it's probably one of those and it was all in your head type of games, though if I may be honest, I don't think it robs this game of any of its meaning or depth. Regardless of all that pontificating about nothing, to make myself sound smart, you cut your path through the meat mines and make your way to the next major section of the game, which I affectionately refer to as the necropolis. I don't think it's called that, but I don't know. Necropolis is a really fun word, yeah. It's this massive greystone temple that definitely seems to be a place of worship, if not some place of great importance. A narrow walkway connects the mines to this location, with the largest of the fleshy growths seemingly laying dormant, barely shuddering in a mist-cloaked area beneath you. You make your way over and hear the screaming of either a woman, a bobcat, a goat, or just some generic critter of some sort. But I suppose this is kind of on par for this game. Had to have at least one of those in a horror game, you know? There are statues in this game. The larger ones are in front of this necropolis temple. They are all of the same woman, it seems, depicted angelically or heroically. I should bring this up because this woman is at least vaguely important to the story to some degree, I think. We'll see, but yeah, so you might be asking yourself, how important is she? Well, yeah, let's just cover the temple, and I hope you guys aren't afraid of eye contact. Inside the temple we go, and it is a brief stint, but you make it to a room at a certain point that feels significant, I guess? Well, you see that woman that has been the reference for the statues, I would assume, sitting on a fake sun in a recreated solar system in the middle of the room. She disappears as you get closer, leaving you to do, that. You didn't need that anyway, I guess. That's your baby heart. You get a new one when you're older. The sun above you begins to turn as the solar system attached to it begins to rotate, and a dark shadow is cast upon a specific wall. And of course, you just gotta walk into the shadow, giving you an idea of how kind of surrealist the way that this game's puzzle progression is going to end up being. But yeah, this is the next section, of which you basically end up in the black void from the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1. Invisible pathway under you leads you to this massive door thing with a kind of similarly eye-like symbol in the center. Instinctively, Mr. Guy places his hand on it, and we get another flashback of something that isn't Mr. Guy here. We see a brief flash of some woman's hand, probably the one we saw earlier, getting an IV put in. The second the needle touches her skin, it flashes back to Mr. Guy, who gets his hand run through by a pointy thing.
Watch out for those pointy bits!
The door turns red with his blood, as it seems to have drank quite a lot of it. And you'd think Mr. Guy would be pissed about this, but not to let him get pissed about anything. He ends up with a new superpower, so that's cool. The hand-eye seeing glass thing. I'm just gonna call it the eye instrument. You guys can call it whatever you want, but that's what the game calls it, but there's a lot more going on here. With this active, you can actually see hidden pathways, as well as hidden elements to the world around you. To test it out, you have to use it to get out of this black void, because when you have it active, it highlights the entire area in bright blue and shows you this crystalline invisible path. So, okay, here's where we have to confront the second elephant in the room that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and that is, this game is beautiful. It is genuinely such a unique aesthetic, and as far as surrealist art pieces go, it is pretty wonderful. But this game is so fucking hard to look at for long periods of time. I don't know if I'm just a little bitch or built wrong, and the years of staring too close to a screen have robbed me with the ability to appreciate beauty like this, but I actually had to take a break every time I played this game for longer than an hour because of the pulse-pounding fucking migraine I would get from it. It probably has to do with how the game processes depth and the texture dithering mixed with the pixelation not being something that my eyes can adjust to. Kind of like a visual version of Vertigo, I guess, where like I can perceive the depth, but there's actually none, and it's not whatever. As well as the color usage being bright in a lot of places, and especially migraine-inducing, which sucks because this game is so pretty, but so hard to look at. It's like staring at the brightest part of a beautiful fire. Yeah, you could probably do it for a little bit, but it isn't recommended. Speaking of, I bring this up now because the eyeglass hand power, yeah, that cranks this up to 11 as it puts a light, bright blue filter on everything, and every time I had a longer play session and I decided to use it, it felt like I suddenly had an ice pick jammed into the back of my eyes. I love how this game looks, but it hurts so much to look at. We will touch upon this more in the wrap-up, but I just wanted to get this out of the way now before, I don't know, you guys talked about it in the comments, but back to the game, I guess. Navigating the weird glass bridge maze, we make it to the forest. Well, sort of. It's the deep forest. Basically the most dangerous part of the game, as sometimes you can't even come here. You see the glowing wife in the distance that I assume is something you're supposed to follow to some degree. Okay, so you follow her through the woods, not knowing where she is leading you. She seemed almost benevolent for the majority of the game so far, and there's a certain degree of reverence for her because of all the statues, so why not? You get to the end of the path to find that she is not as she appears, as this is not your wife at all. This is a lure, a giant fleshy ball that leads to a gaping maw of a massive forest angler fish. Oh yeah, no, it happens to everybody. Sending you back to the waiting room, but this is by intent because when you exit the waiting room next, this time you enter the next major location of the game, which is the village. I like the village. There is a lot going on here. It's just this huge interactable list of puzzles in order to get 3 specific keys that allow you to open up a very important door. And there's a bunch of fun little set dressings. I don't know if this has any like symbolic meaning or depth, but by God, is it just, it's kind of fun. The main overarching puzzle, as I said, was getting 3 keys, and all of these keys loop back into each other. So you go to a barn to collect a key, and then there's a crank that you put on the well. You go to the witch's hut to get a bucket to put on there. It gives you a bucket of water to put out fire, and the blacksmith's forge to get a key, and so on and so forth. There's also just going out into a few weird places that have like such interesting things going on with them. I know I'm using very scientific terms here, but just, 2 things I want to shout out here. Places that I really liked were the witch's cabin in the middle of the woods with the coziest vibes I've ever seen, to the point where you can actually see me in the gameplay just kind of pause and soak them in for a bit because the vibes were just that good. Then you have that time I went to the dock to do some fishing, and then I got all of the fish, which also led to it raining fish, but also blood. Yeah, this game is kind of weird for that, but you get all 3 keys, not to spoil any of the puzzles, but what you do is use them to unlock this secret door underground. So what is important that it required 3 magical esoteric keys to get into? Oh, easy. It's one of the most visually striking areas in the game. I also hope you aren't prone to migraines, because by God, this tunnel was adjusting the lenses of my eyes, I swear. It felt like a slug was sliding up and down my optic nerve, and it was very pretty also. Walking through the blue pulsating tunnel of pain, whimsy, and merriment, you enter a trigger warning for eye contact women and big women. Yes, those are 2 separate categories. They're in my book of scary things. Fuck off. But you see a big version of that woman who has been appearing throughout the game, and she stares at you quite closely, I will add, with the mechanic of this section being you cannot move your camera while she is within eyeshot. You are locked to be constantly staring at her. You'd think it would be hard to navigate, but no, the pathways of this cave system seem to intentionally be easy to navigate for that reason. Outside of her being her multiple times, there are statues of religious drawings all over the walls showing that she is an individual of worship to some degree in this cave. And who worshipped her? Why is she here? I do not know, because this is obviously in the head of some man on his deathbed, dying of necrosis, a bullet wound, maybe some debilitating disease of some shit, so who am I to judge the cults who have taken up roost in his brain caves? After navigating through the various lady and non-lady parts of the cave, I shouldn't have called them non-lady parts, that sounds whatever. You get to one more lady, the biggest one of them all it seems, and she directs you to her eye, the one that has been staring at you the whole time. As you get closer, her pupil dilates more and more until from your perspective it's a giant portal that you can walk into, and you do to get to the next area. Though if you're me, you test to see if it's proximity based and if it can get smaller when you walk away. It is, and also it's really funny to look at. Anyhow, you pop into her mind palace and make your way through the Black Kingdom Heart's eternal dark pit, which leads to the waiting room of the hospital you were staying in before. I'll take sentences that were never spoken until now for 500 on that one. One of the funnier visual bits happens here. When you re-enter the surgery room you started in, and see a giant fucking key in there. I gotta say, giant key is a pretty funny visual gag. You pick it up and hoist it over your shoulder like it's a log, and you're taking it home to split it for the winter. Exiting the hospital space, you re-enter the village space behind a locked gate that you couldn't get through before. Slowly making your way up a spiral hill with this key over your shoulder, you find a massive keyhole, which, I mean, it's very self-explanatory. what this means. So you plunge that sucker in, twist it, and then the doors to a local bell tower opens up. Not gonna lie, I was getting Resident Evil 4 flashbacks here. I know, village bell tower, it's not that much to draw off of, but things only get worse when I rang the bell and the entire area began to get plunged into fire. And there was a bunch of people silhouettes made of fire that were trying to burn the poor lady that we have been seeing this entire time at the stake. Albeit she's much smaller now than before, so I guess that's just kind of a temporary buff she can apply to herself from time to time, but whatever. Going to go meet the poor burning lady, you see the chanting silhouettes of people through the tower, but they swiftly disappear as you approach. This is actually really goddamn cool. I gotta say, I love the atmosphere. I love the look of everything, and the only problem is this is where I got my first major bug. See, when you go up to the lady and give her a weird squeeze with your hand, it is supposed to play this. But instead, I got a cutscene of a static door image for the whole time while the sound was playing of what the cutscene was supposed to be. And that's it. Nothing crazy. It's just supposed to show your character burning up in a hospital dead, likely from necrosis or pain or a fever or whatever, specifically involving his hand, to which, when you enter back into the dreamscape, you now have a burning hand ability, which you can use to light shit on fire, light your path, as well as keep evil things away. New power acquired, we head back to the village and we find that much like most things in our life right now, it's on fire. So I guess no point staying here. Prior to this point, there was a dark area that you couldn't really access because it would just be too dark and you'd end up just getting looped back around. But now that you have a fire on your hand, I guess it's as good a light as you can get, really. So through the darkened forests we go, making our way to the next and my actual favorite part of the game, the Slaughter Factory. No clue if that's what it's called. I just call it that because, well, you're gonna find out why in, now. Dozens of tracked conveyor meat racks carrying thousands of dead pigs into this gigantic burning chapel-looking building. There's quite a lot of religious symbolism in this level, but there is also a bunch of symbolism involving the never-ending march of pigs into a meat grinder. This level is fucking stellar. It is beautiful, it is grotesque, and the vibes are just amazing. You follow a tract of pigs into a massive building, and it leads to an almost symbolic journey. I say it is just symbolic or allegorical, whatever the word is. Yeah, you go through this meat factory. As I mentioned, there is a whole bunch of symbols here that you can see, using your fire-powered hand to light up a furnace that plays almost organ-like music, the never-ending amount of pigs that are thrown into some useless purpose. Though I should also state that purpose kind of weird. As you progress through the level, you hear the groaning and growling of some kind of monster, something huge. You're not 100% certain what it is until the end, and I gotta state, it is kind of symbolic to something. The main thing to key in here is that you are following the same path as every other pig in this factory, all going to the same end. Regardless of your ability, you're still just another pig on a hook being fed to something. And what exactly are you being fed to? It's not easy to answer because it's basically just the Sarlacc pit's slightly melted cousin. So like the Great Maw from Warhammer, or your mum? Anywho, into the giant gaping maw you go, and as you could tell by the footage, the spirit of some ancient chimp warrior possessed me, and I was kind of hyped to get eaten, I guess. And eaten you do become as you slide down the beast's gullet. You eventually end up in something that is not a pile of dead, partially digested pigs, but a pool full of blood, unless you're like me, and because of my weird fidgeting, I ended up on a pedestal that was invisible, and then I just hopped into a pool of blood. It was kind of funny. But the pool of blood was supposed to cushion your fall instead of me breaking my legs on an invisible platform, but, you know. The area around you has a very religious feel to it. Even the music eventually transitions to what sounds like a Gregorian hymn done by animals of some indeterminate genus. Though, so yeah, this temple's kind of filled with meat, though I suppose saying it's filled with meat doesn't really work here, more like made of meat more than anything else. But you walk down this rather well-kept ramp, all things considered, to find a bird bath looking thing, and once again you rip off a piece of cube for some esoteric ritual involving collecting power of some sort, I guess? I don't know at this point. The dude seems to know what he's doing. You yank out your eyeball. I mean, I guess you do have 2 eyeballs after all, so that you technically don't need both, but whatever, man. Far be it from me to question the mindset of Mr. Guy here. You toss that sucker into the pool, and then your eye, which I guess is some potent shit, I should add, it begins to drain the meat temple of all of its red, I think. As afterwards, the blood of the bird bath seems to transfuse into the eye and turn into some mystical glass orb. But the entirety of the temple has changed as well, with it now looking almost drained of life, bone white for most of it. It's now that you notice by the entrance that you came in, there's 2 eerie looking reverse eyes, I guess, looking at you. I just thought it was cool looking, I guess. But yeah, with your new magical glass eye, you walk towards the light of a new gateway that'll lead you to the... Oh my Jesus, fuck my eyes! I feel like I just got boxed with a flashbang. What the fuck? I already have likely developed a migraine condition because of this game. I don't need to volunteer to have my retinas scoured by the blinding light of some dude's deathbed hallucinations. Complaints aside, you exit the Eye Destroyer 9000 to get back to right where you had started before you entered the slaughter factory. I should note, with no more pigs being sent to slaughter due to your actions and sacrifice. Seems like a fun metaphor of some sort. Let's not think on it too much, or else we might start to bleed from the ears. Anywho, let's go off to the next esoteric nightmare K-hole and see what the hell we can reap upon this world, especially my battered psyche. At this point, I'm already just along for the ride. Oh, fuck, that doesn't look good. I don't know if the evil black swirl in the sky was there before, but it is now, and it looks like something we should deal with. I don't know, Mr. Guy seems to know what to do, as we are just kind of holding W and hoping that he knows more than we do. And considering his first inclination towards most situations is to pluck out a vital organ of some sort, and he is still somehow in fact alive but also has superpowers, I think he's got some kind of esoteric knowledge rattling around his brain that we don't, so I trust him. Venturing forward, we navigate through the forest once again, as a bunch of the tracks have collapsed and give us new means of passage, and we end up going along the shoreline of what I assume is the ocean, but considering this game's track record, it's probably just some goop representing cerebral spinal fluid or some shit. Looking at some of the lovely docks that we can just kind of stare at and fiddling with a lamp for a second longer than I probably should have, we head towards the next destination, which is a fire watch tower, I believe. And I mean this with all sincerity, the sequence of events that is about to occur made me feel happy and excited and kind of pumped, and I don't know why, because I don't know what happened. I don't know, the pad, just, let's look at this. So, like, I don't fully know what happened here, but the music makes it sound like it was a good thing, and considering this is all a manifestation of Mr. Guy's psyche, I'm gonna choose to believe it's a good thing, I think. Maybe? So yeah, your magical glass eyeball drinks all the water and thus reveals the ocean floor to you that was by the docks. I don't know how, but it did make me feel weirdly triumphant, and I don't know why, because I had no idea what was going on, but I guess that's just the power of vibes. So, heading back to the dock and heading into where the water was before, we get a little Death Stranding in our mix here, as there's just a bunch of dead and dying sea life all over the floor here. I don't know if this is symbolic of anything. I guess fuck whales? I don't know. The path seems desolate, but the lighting is pretty bright, and again, vibes alone, this place is pretty cool. You know, just chilling with all the dead whales and shit, kind of nice. Then you find a particularly large dead whale, which I guess operates on TARDIS logic, because even though it's large on the outside, it's even larger once you get inside of its guts. Okay, not like that, you fucking weirdos. You find that its insides are actually significantly larger than the outsides, leading to more of these fleshy growths that only go away with light. Unfortunately for you fuckers, I now have a portable hand flame, so I can go wherever I please, and also I have to ask again, like, what the fuck is actually going on? I feel like I just can't piece anything together, and there is no real major lore videos out there explaining this, and I don't think the developer has said anything, but me scratching the thinky parts of my brain a bit too hard here aside, we end up at another non-Euclidean nightmarescape, which is a steel hatch leading into the next major section of Lay. I'm gonna just be breezing past the submarine part of this game, but I gotta say, it is one of the better sections of the game. It uses all three of your hand powers, with the cutting tool being used to chop down chains and break open blocked off areas, your seeing tool to be able to see secret power lines that guide you through illusory puzzles, and the burning tool lets you see in dark areas. It feels pretty cool, with a lot of puzzles being really fun and intuitive. I should note that none of them are too tough to finish. I'm kind of an idiot, if you couldn't tell, but I don't know, I'm here to have fun, not think too hard. If I wanted to think too hard, I'd probably be dead right now, because if I think at all about what I'm seeing, I oftentimes feel like I have headbutted a belt sander. The submarine itself is just a puzzle of redirecting power in order to gain access to new locations. These new locations eventually have an area that, using your seeing eye tool, you can see back in time to an explosion that likely is the reason why the submarine sunk. And you see people flying, and through some careful positioning, you can actually see that their bodies and the debris form a code. This code, you write it down and memorize it, go back to the front of the ship, and that's the express goal. Just open up the door. What happens when you open up the door with the key code? I'm not 100% certain, but I do have a good feeling about it. You find the nuclear reactor of the sub. You need to get access to the fuel rods or some shit, but you need two people to open it. You need to have two people pull the lever at the same time, so the woman you've been seeing throughout the game manifests, and you are given this piano cue that makes it seem somber. I don't know. It came across to me that this was symbolically representative of a difficult decision made by both people, Mr. Guy and Mrs. Lady, the literal nuclear option, as it were. It has a melancholic tinge to it that, as you've probably been able to tell, I can't quite place. The fuel rod exposed, you touch it and are brought to some ancient Grecian-looking temple with a dead soldier inside. There is only really one thing to interact with, to my knowledge, in here, and it is this vase at the back that, upon touching it, releases apparently all of the world's fucking evils, which, gotta admit, was a bit disconcerting. You wake up back at the submarine, and whatever you did, the damn thing did not like it. As the loud, and oddly enough, maybe I just have like a brain bleed, but I found this music siren, whatever, kind of catchy, blaring in the background. It basically tells you to leave, like, soon. The sub is upside down now, so it's time to get the fuck out. Crawling through the area you just were, but upside down, was kind of cool. It feels nervous and tense, like you shouldn't have done that, but hey, it was the only way of progress, so you can't blame me for that. You eventually find a tunnel of light, and yeah, okay, back in the forest, I guess. I suppose it's just your central hub area to some degree, but far be it for me for assuming that there'd be a logical through line between the locations you can travel, but whatever. I gotta say, fellas, we are in the end game now, and although a lot is going to happen in the next little while, we are actually in the final stretch of the game, so to bait the hook, I'll let you guys know it's actually the best sections of the game coming up with some of my favorite puzzles, but I won't spoil it just yet. Though, warning, if you're the type to get migraines or like vertigo at all, you're probably going to you're going to feel it. But yeah, let's get into that. Even though you are back in the forest, the atmosphere is different. It is dark. It almost feels serious for the first time in the game. I mean, to be fair, this game isn't exactly jovial or upbeat, really, but this section of the game feels like there is a certain tone shift that they are trying to convey. Like the final elements necessary to completing whatever this journey is are about to fall into place. You go back to the docks now with a usable boat and water to pilot on, because I guess the water's back. You glide across the water to to the goal that has been in sight the entire game, this tower with the heart on it. The sky dark and red, almost as if it were some kind of evil sunset. You make it closer and reality begins to flip, the tower slowly rotating, and with it the horizon, revealing the roots of this tower, revealing you have yet more to traverse to get to the heart of it, literally. The closer you get, the weirder the environment becomes, but it feels like an almost spiritual journey. Entering the roots of the tower, you are greeted with a dark tunnel that is incredibly foreboding, leading to a door that requires you to use all three of your hand abilities to solve. The door opens to what can only be described as the most symbolic section of the game. I don't know fully what it is symbolizing, but I'll give you the broad sweeps here. Basically, you enter the waiting room once again and hear the sound of rattling metal. You find a gigantic piton jammed into the ground with a chain on it extending off into the sky. With your knife hand, you are able to break the chain and the piton explodes out of the ground, no longer tethering whatever it was to the ground. The next section is Surrealist Heaven, where multiple strings of sections are put together on an infinite loop, each one with a different puzzle that requires one of your senses. You need to hear for the piton jammed into the ground. You need to use your seeing tool in order to view it from a distance as they glow white, and you need to be able to solve infinite geometry puzzles, usually by falling through them infinitely in order to get to where you need to go. With each piton exploding out of the ground, the chains binding them are gone. It is weirdly satisfying. With each piton, the music grows louder and more triumphant as you work your way to the next one by one, falling deeper and deeper into this abyss. You are somehow removing the ties that bind you, and I'm still trying to piece together what it all means. After all the pitons are gone, you are left in a white void where a giant Mrs. Lady is offering help to get you one more giant key. Or I guess it's a normal key for her. You get the key and you're introduced to a really cool segment where you are super tiny Mr. Guy and have to pilot the key like a log roller into a giant lock and then turn it. That's kind of cute. I really like that as just a perspective shift. This leads to one last chain, one more gigantic chain to break. Almost unceremoniously, you break it and the giant lady offers you some ornate cube. Walking into it, we enter what I will openly state with my whole chest, no joke, is the coolest fucking section of this entire game. It is so cool and just so fun. If you like weird puzzles and geometry issues, it is also the most migraine-inducing section of a game I have ever played in my entire life, but I would gladly suffer through this section again just to experience it another time. Basically, your vision is turned into halves, where there is a dividing line down the center of your screen. One of those ends up moving normally, and the other is inverted, giving it this weird, shifting, horrendous look to it, and I really like the way that it looks. But it is just so cool, as you need to align your vision in order to make hallways, usable stairs, and passages to continue through this area. This puzzle is so fucking cool because it also allows you to see the game in a different perspective, both literally and figuratively. But it also is something I've never seen in any other game. There has to be some other game out there that's done this at this point. It's not exactly a revolutionary concept, but I couldn't name one off the top of my head, to be completely honest with you. This is my favorite section of this game. The puzzle is all navigation and super fun. It's pretty easy to do, but it's, you know, it's got some trippy visuals that make it a very visually appealing section. But there is one small caveat to state, and that is, this is the section of the game that I got a game-breaking bug and had to restart the whole puzzle. I don't know what triggered it, but for some reason, the eye spiraling whatever puzzle actually locked in place before I got to the end section, which basically made it so that I was stuck in a hallway and was forced to look at a scuffed painting of someone whose face was kind of paused perfectly to make it look like they had a really pushed-in gigantic nose, which, although inherently hilarious, I gotta say was kind of frustrating as I was enjoying the section so much it just blue-balled me like last second. Either way, I had to reload my progress and go back to the start where the big chain was and do the whole thing over again. So let's get it. Do the puzzle over again and get only marginally annoyed at the fact that I was literally like maybe 5 feet away from beating this specific section and moving on, but whatever, man. We got a door that I am not 100% convinced wasn't bugged and opens to what is going to likely be the final major puzzle of the game. You enter a cathedral, at least it seems to be as such. At the end of the room, it appears Mrs. Lady is sitting at some altar, so obviously us being down cataclysmic for a lady with a staring problem, we gotta go see her, right? But whoopsie pupsie, the floor caves in underneath us and we are sent back to the waiting room for a scene that I don't know, but it's cool. I like it. I don't know how to really describe it completely, but basically, the only way I can really give this to you is by describing it to you directly, so, yeah, just follow me on this. You look around to see that there is a pounding on some door in the back room. Going towards it, it eventually is revealed that it bursts open and, pigs come out. They happen. Pigs happen. Probably grateful that you destroyed the big slaughter factory or whatever the fuck that was. They start to march on through and allow you to enter their lines. They explode, creating multiple massive lines of pigs, and they do kind of one thing, which is once they get to the exit where you usually exit the waiting room, they stand up on their hind legs and then jump right into the pit that formed, which, you know, it was preventing you from getting across, and I guess they owe you favors, so the bodies start to stack up higher and higher until there is a flesh meat bridge for you to cross to go meet your lady. This game is weird. Regardless of how weird it is, there is a new obstacle. Coming out of the floor in a spiral pattern is a giant fucking snake, which, cool, and it eats you. Neat. Back to the waiting room, I guess, for a technical game over, and here is a summation of your next segment. There is a big-ass snake. It doesn't like you. If you go near it, it kills you. Thus, you have to take care of it. How do you do it? Well, you engage in what is probably the game's best puzzle. It is so good and so visually striking that I'm not gonna spoil it. I'll just let you know the basics of it. Basically, you enter a painting, which is essentially an alternate reality. In the painting is yet another painting you can walk into. Each painting is a different scene, and in total, there are 3 in this world that you can pick up and enter. But here's the gimmick. When you take a painting that you can pick up and you walk into another painting, the atmosphere of the one you entered changes the scene of the one you're holding. So say you have the painting that is of a frozen forest in your hand and you walk into the painting that has a lit fireplace, it makes the season shift from winter to summer in the forested painting. It requires a little bit of abstract thinking to understand, and it can be weird, with each of the 3 paintings having a piece of a broadsword for some reason, and the broadsword is the key thing you need to kind of progress right now. But once again, I'm not going to tell you how this puzzle flows or how you solve it. I want you guys to play Eclipsium and to actually experience it, because it's really nice. So, out of the painted world we go and see the bitch-ass snake one last time as it tries to eat you once more, and you run it through the head with your sword, and killing it. Not even just killing it, but really killing it. Like, this is the deadest you can get someone with a sword wound. It's pretty damn dead. Bro turns into a skeleton that you can use as stairs, which, I don't know, I think that's there's no coming back from that. And also, it's weirdly convenient that that happened, because you need to ascend that pillar anyway to likely go find that lady that's been staring at you this entire game. So you go up and up and up, and the score of the game begins to encapsulate the finality of the situation, building and swelling to this triumphant tune that encapsulates the journey up to this point. Up we go. Mr. Guy has sacrificed so much to get here, and thus it is time to okay, cool. You don't need ribs anyway, it's fine. I mean, their main purpose is to protect your vital organs, and if you keep ripping them out, I mean, It's not, whatever. So yeah, Mr. Guy uses his ribs as climbing picks in order to get up the final wall to the heart of this world. With almost nothing left to give, he finally arrives the top of the tower, the spiraled loop that has his heart in it at the center, or we at least presume it's his heart. The music is somber and sad, but sweet in a way. Circling around the ring, you see the woman one last time. She reaches out to you to embrace. As the final cutscene plays, you levitate up into the sky, holding each other as the world crumbles around you. There is a lot of flashes in and out of the dream world and the real world. A clock perpetually frozen at 5 after 6 is finally able to move past. The door to your hospital room opens up to a blinding light where Mrs. Lady is there to greet you, and that is Eclipsium. This game is surreal. I didn't have to tell you that, but I can't help but feel its message, although veiled under its symbolism, is fairly poignant. Even though, yeah, sure, I can't fully explain the complete reason as to why Mr. Guy was ripping out his ribs to climb a wall in the end, or why specifically the painting section exists. All I know is that 1, I got really happy when I found out that you could pet the cat in the painting section, and 2, this game's story, although not direct, I can understand. If you have even the basic idea or understanding of subtext or symbology, you can kind of figure something out even if it's not openly stated. My interpretation of the game is simply put that Mr. Guy and Mrs. Lady are a couple, probably married or what have you, and they ended up getting wrapped up in some kind of war, a civil conflict. Both either sickened or hurt badly due to this conflict, and the game is simply the final thoughts of Mr. Guy before he dies in the hospital of his injuries. Which, yeah, sure, the "and it was all in his head" story device is quite played up, and it honestly does suck in most areas. But I think it works here because the game isn't lying to you. The image of pigs marching to their death single file only to be consumed by some giant nameless monster is such a strong war image that can only exist in a dreamscape. This game operates on very good established dream logic where there is a logical connection between one section to the other, so it's not inherently frustrating when something doesn't make sense because everything in its own way kind of makes sense. And I love the overarching message that in the end, him and his lover are the only things that mattered to each other, and that was really the thing that he was after this entire time. All he wanted was to be back with them. The bright light behind the door and her waiting for him, symbolizing him crossing over the threshold. I like to think that all the weird bodily mutilations of this game were somehow a result of Mr. Guy subconsciously dealing with the surgeries and the medical treatments being done to his body, and the collapsing world around him was him finally giving in and realizing that all he ever wanted was to just be with his lover one more time. Thus, all the powers being referenced to the game have kind of a medical but also a religious and war symbolism to them. The knife hand being a weapon, but also a representation of a scalpel. The eye tool representing the staring and the longing looks that his lover would give, as well as the IV drip that she received. The fire hand being representative probably how she was killed during that civil conflict, but also representing the fever that he felt. It's pretty clever. I may be wrong, but I think that's probably what happened. So before we end off, let's talk about a few of the issues that I had with the game and give you my overall opinion. Eclipsium is one of those games that I think most people who like surrealist horror should try. I don't even think I should call it a horror game, as I suppose there are only minor elements of body horror here and there, but a lot of this stuff is more in line with just a narrative drama romance, but I suppose none of those are really good labels to slap on this, other than just saying it's a surrealist art piece. I will state that I do have a few criticisms, the biggest of which is not the fact the game made me feel like my brain was going to the torment nexus every time I played for a bit too long. It was more, well, this game is buggy. It's not like a buggy, unplayable mess, but I had one game-breaking bug that made it so that I had to restart, and a bunch of smaller ones that were not recorded and also were just along for the ride. So it did kind of spoil my experience in some areas, but also, for further context, I bought this game for a friend as it was relatively cheap, and I wanted to get someone else's opinion on it after I had completed it. And I remember getting a screenshot from her in the middle of the night as she was just asking that was nothing supposed to happen in this particular segment, to which I should let you know, no, something was supposed to happen. She had experienced a game-breaking bug of her own that made it so that she had to also restart from a checkpoint. The game's instability is something I see being brought up by the few people who actually talk about this game, and although I understand as the game is very experimental and due to its weird visual elements, a lot of it could probably be a programming nightmare. I'm not a programmer, but I just assume as such. I do think that another round of bug fixes would have been great to make this game a bit more stable. Another thing that I have to say in terms of criticism is the game is just a bit too simplistic for my tastes. I know it's got a few good puzzles and some very fun visual elements, but in general the game is about 80% holding the W key and walking forward looking at cool stuff. Now, the stuff is cool to look at, but dog, I bought a game, not a slightly interactive movie. Now, I am not the type of person to complain about a game that is primarily a narrative experience being primarily a narrative experience as opposed to a gameplay one, but there are some pretty fun elements that are introduced in the game that I feel with a little bit more expansion could be a very unique experience. I love the hand tools system. That is such a fun way to interact with puzzles in the game. If there was just a bit more complexity and a bit more interactivity, there could be really something polished and beautiful here. I thought it was really good and a really solid surrealist experience, but those two elements did kind of make it a little bit difficult for me. I just wanted a little bit more interactivity and I wanted a little bit more stability. But if these are my main criticisms, I should probably say that that's a good thing. Eclipsium is one of the most striking games I've ever seen visually. I've never played anything that looked like this before. I look forward to what the developer has to do next, and I give it a solid recommend. I think you should play through it and experience the stuff that I didn't bring up, but also, you gotta remember, this game is not for those who tend to get a lot of headaches if you look at things for too long. I don't usually get headaches like that. I work at a computer all day, so I don't know, maybe I'm just built incorrectly, but whatever. So, that's another game done, and I'm going strong into the next month. I have most of the gameplay footage for the next game that I want to get done, and you guys are not getting rid of me that easy. A promise is a promise, and I'm going to be riding this horror game shtick into the sunset, or until me or my editor dies. Also, thank you, Teterit, for editing this video. You are a godsend. Subscribe to her channel. She does videos better than I ever will. And, yeah. I think you guys are going to love what I have planned going into the next month, and it's going to be a bit of a blast from the past. So until then, I hope you all have a wonderful night.